Have you ever wanted to create your own version of ChatGPT that's tailored just for you? How about doing this without knowing how to write a single line of code? Well, I've got great news. You can. In this video, I'll show you how to build your own personal GPT model customized to your needs. Just follow my 10 easy steps, and as promised, you don't need to be a coding pro or even a tech expert to create your own AI assistant. So, what do you need to get started? Firstly, you'll need a GPT Plus subscription. Then have a purpose or a niche in mind for your GPT model. And finally, some knowledge. This will be text files that will upload, and your GPT model will use these when answering questions for you. Finally, remember, you don't need to know how to code. Step 1. Get started by creating a draft. Okay, let's get started. We're on the main ChatGPT Explorer page, and you should be able to see this new option to create a GPT at the top. You should also see that it's currently in beta. All we need to do is click on this large plus symbol to launch the builder and create our new GPT model draft. And there you go, we are inside the builder and we've created our first GPT model, all without writing any code. Step 2, get familiar with the GPT builder by taking a tour. Okay, let's take a quick tour of the GPT builder. We start in the interactive builder window where we can send messages to the builder. This is like using ChatGPT, but we use these messages to build our own GPT model, which is kind of cool. Next, we have the configure tab. This is where we'll spend nearly all of our time to build our GPT model. In this window, we have a variety of options. We can upload a photo for our GPT model by using this large plus symbol here, and also name our GPT model, as well as adding a description. Next up, we also have the ability to add instructions. This is key, as it lets us define what our model should and should not do, as well as how it should behave. Next up, we also have the ability to add conversation starters. These are essentially suggested prompts that we can show to our users. It gives them an idea of what they may want to ask. These are the types of things you see showing up in the right in the chat window over here. Next up, we can build our GPT model's knowledge by uploading files. All we have to do is click on the button to upload files, and this will be really helpful for tailoring our GPT and its responses. After that, we have the capabilities list, which includes web browsing, image generation with DALL-E, and the option to interpret code. So everything you would expect in the GPT-4, we can include with our own model. Then we have the ability to add actions. There's also an advanced option area, which is essentially for people who do know how to code. As I've mentioned, we are not going to be coding in this video, so we're not going to dive into this today, but it's good to know that it's here if you are a developer. As I promised, no code is required. So there you go. We have now toured this window, and before moving on to the next phase, I'm going to check this box as I want our model to interpret code. Great, let's carry on and then work on the next bit. Step 3, begin basic setup and name your GPT. Okay, let's get building. I'll start by uploading an image from my GPT model. You even have the option to use DALL-E to generate an image for you, which is a nice touch. I'll be uploading a photo from my GPT, but you can use DALL-E if you prefer. Okay, let's do this now. So there you can see the Hackr.io logo, and it's also showing over in the preview. Now let's name my GPT model. Actually, this also shows up here in the preview window on the right. It's looking really good already with the logo and the name. Next step, add a description. Again, this will show up in the preview. It should be informative for your users. My GPT will answer questions about any articles they have read and also help them with their coding. This is a really good fit Hackr.io audience. And as you can see, as I write this out in the description box, it is updating in real time in the preview window on the right, and it's looking quite professional already. Now, at this stage, we have a logo, a name, and a description, and it now lets the user know what they can expect when using the Hackr.io chat. It's looking really professional and a lot like what you'd expect from any GPT. The final step is to move on to the instructions. This is one of the most important parts. Step 4, let's get training and instruct your GPT. Now it's time to add instructions for my GPT model. I'm going to begin by letting my GPT know that it should provide friendly and helpful answers to any of my users' questions, which will be after they have read blog articles at Hackr.io. This is a solid starting point for my instructions, because it links back to the description and the purpose of my particular GPT model. Of course, tailor this to fit your own GPT model and its own purpose. Okay, after we have this instruction in place, let's think about the next one. I think I'm going to let my GPT know that it should aim to be both conversational, but also respectful and professional. So I'm going to write out that instruction now, letting my GPT know how it should behave when interacting with my users. Again, you should tailor this to fit your own use case. Think about these types of things when thinking about how your GPT will interact with your users and your audience. It is going to be a representation of yourself. Next, I'll also tell it how to handle scenarios when it cannot answer a question by recommending that the user should either leave a blog comment or email us for help. Both of these are good fits for our GPT use case, as we expect users to be asking questions after reading a blog. And naturally, you can always reach out to us via email if you have any questions. I think again, as I pointed out before, tailor these to meet your own GPT model's needs, but this is a good starting point if you're writing something like a blog and including a GPT model for that. Okay, now that we've reached this point and we've told the user that they can add a comment or contact us, let's move on to our next instruction, which will be the final instruction for my GPT model. And this is going to relate to using the knowledge files that I plan to be uploading. So I will tell my GPT that it should use these files as an informational resource, and it can be used to help them when answering user questions. This makes sense because, of course, we are asking our GPT to be linked back to our blog, and by adding text files that are linked to our blog, we're giving information that the GPT model can directly use when answering user questions. Okay, that now rounds out our instructions for the GPT model. We now have 4 different instructions that tell my GPT how it should behave, how it should not behave, and how users can find help or get extra help if they require by adding comments, and how it can use the knowledge files to get more information to pass on to the users. The final step is to add the knowledge. Let's now look at this next. Step 5. Give your GPT the knowledge it needs by uploading text files. So, as I mentioned in the instructions, I plan to upload text files that my GPT model can use as an informational resource. These can be anything you like, as long as they include text that the GPT can extract. I'll start by uploading text files that contain the content from 2 blog articles at hackr.io. So here we have the 2 files being uploaded. As you can see from the circular status bar, that my GPT is extracting the text from these files. Now, depending on the size of your files, this might take a few minutes. So be patient, wait for it to do its thing, and when it's done, we'll be ready to carry on. Mine is just about finished, the circular bar is near the top, and when the icon changes, we'll be able to move on to creating our conversation starters. Great, that's worked. Now let's add some conversation starters, which, if you remember, are prompts that your user can use to get started. Now for my first prompt, I'll ask about the best Python course. This makes sense for me as I've uploaded our article from hackr.io that explores the best Python courses. Notice that this then appears in a preview as a prompt that the user can click on. Next, I'm going to add a second prompt, and this will ask about a good Python project for beginners. Once more, this is a good fit for my GPT, because I've uploaded our blog content from hackr.io for the best Python projects. This then appears as a prompt in the preview window, which they can click on. Perfect. Now, at this stage, I will point out the following. You can add anything you like for these conversation starters, but I would recommend prompts that are related to your data, as the idea with having your own GPT is for it to be specialized for your needs. So try and stick to prompts that link to the data in the knowledge that you are uploading. Perfect. At this point, let's take a moment to recap everything that we've done so far before saving our changes and moving on. Now, we've added our logo, we have named our GPT model, we've added a description, and we've added a range of instructions. Perfect. We've then moved on further down and added some conversation starters that tie into the knowledge that we've uploaded. We can now head to the top right and save our progress. Notice that we have various options for publishing. For now, I will make this available to me and anyone with a link. You can choose whichever one is good for you. Wait for that to save, and once it's completed, you will then be able to move on. And at that point, you will see that you'll be presented with your completed GPT. And you can see it in this model window here. And it's looking really professional. I'm really pleased with how it's coming along. But before we start playing with it, head to the top left, click on Edit, and then let's move back to the Builder window. And you see we've got the 2 tabs again, the interactive interface and the configure screen. Now let's move back into the configure screen for a moment for making refinements with the interactive builder. Step 6, finishing off with GPT refinement. Now, before we move on to refinement, let's take a look at the option under additional settings. You'll see there's a checkbox that asks if you want to share your conversation data to improve their models. This is entirely optional and down to your own preferences regarding data privacy. So choose whichever option makes the most sense for you, then save and confirm if you make any changes, and we'll be ready to move on. Great. So now we have everything set up in the configure window. Let's head to the create window to work with the interactive GPT builder. I'm going to send it a message, and I'm going to ask the builder to clarify how my GPT model should handle scenarios when a user asks a question about the best courses. To do this, I'll say that my GPT should provide the top 3. Of course, you can refine your model in any way that makes sense for you, depending on what your niche and specialization is. After we send the message, we've made the request, we are then waiting for GPT to indicate that it is being updated. You'll see that there is a dot there. This will then turn into an updating message. This is great. This may take a moment, so you just have to wait for the update to be implemented. But once that update is implemented and it's complete, we should see another message to let us know that it is all done. After that happens, we should then be able to go back to the configure window and look at the changes. So the GPT behavior is updated. Let's now save our changes. And after we do that, everything should be set. And notice that after that, we also get another message from the GPT builder. This is summarizing to us the changes that were made. This is great because it helps to give us a clear picture of how the builder interpreted our request. Once that's all done, the next stage is to head back to the configure window, and we're going to see something interesting when we do this. Let's go over there now and see what happens when we go back to the configure window. So let's have a look at the instructions. Take a look. Notice that they are now a lot longer. If I expand the screen, you can see that the builder has added more detail regarding my request. This is great. This shows you how the interactive builder works. It's going to take your requests, translate them into instructions, and then add them in the configure area under the instructions area. It's also interesting to see extra information, like the last line that mentions how my GPT should look in the required documents for information. Overall, what's happening here is that my GPT is trying to make the instructions as clear as possible for itself. But of course, if we want to, we can make any changes. Great, we've now reached the stage where we can start testing out our GPT. Time to have some fun. Step 7, initial testing by using actions. Okay, let's test out our GPT by using the preview window within the builder. And I'll start by looking at the conversation starter prompts. We have 2 to choose from, but I think I'll go with the prompt for the best Python course. After clicking on this, my GPT looks within its knowledge base based on the text files it loaded to find an answer. It will then return its interpretation when it's finished searching the knowledge base. So we'll just take a moment to wait for it to do that. You can see the icon with a circular status bar. We then get a checkbox to say that it's done, and then we get our response. And based upon this, it seems that my GPT believes that the best Python course right now from the article is the Complete Python Bootcamp from Dr. Angela Yu. And that is a great choice. I would totally agree with this. It then outlines some of the key information, give the user an overview of why this is a great course choice. That's really helpful. Now, as it's done this, let's now consider continuing on with our testing. We'll do this outside of the preview. Click on the back arrow. In the top left, we return to the chatgpt Explorer page. We can now see our own GPT model underneath the option to create a GPT. This is where it lives, and we can access it by clicking on it here. Let's do that and continue with our testing. And I'll now use the second conversation starter prompt. And this is based upon the best Python beginner project. So I'll click on that, and then I'll wait for my GPT to respond. It has scanned the knowledge base, and it has replied with what it thinks is a great beginner Python project. And in this case, it thinks that a simple calculator is a good starter project. And I would agree, this is a great place for beginners to Python to begin because you get lots of expertise and time playing around with different math operations, the user interface, error handling, etc., etc. So what it is doing is outlining the different elements that we can integrate with this project, which is a great way to explain it to beginners. And when that is done, I think it also makes sense before moving on to try another test. How about we add a follow-up question, and we can ask if this GPT can provide the code for this simple calculator project. Let's do that now. We can enter the question into the text field here, and we'll ask if it can provide the code. Now, if you remember, we include the option for code interpretation in our model, so I'm expecting that this should work just fine. So we take a moment, we wait for the Hackr.io chatgpt to think about how to answer this question. Sometimes you have to be patient, as you experience with all GPTs. And then, as you'd expect, we get a detailed reply with a possible code implementation for this beginner Python project. Now, this is really great because any beginner to Python could then use this to make a start on this simple calculator project. If you're brand new to Python, sometimes the best way to learn is to play around with projects because you can really learn by getting practical and hands-on with things like a calculator, for instance. I also think this is great because it's one of the core features that we wanted to include to help the audience at Hackr.io, alongside the general chat interface. If you remember when I added my description, it was to ask questions about blog articles and also to give them coding help. And we are proving that right now. We have looked at our blogs to give them help, and we have also offered some coding help as well. So that's great. That concludes this first test. Let's now move on to some more tests. Step 8, more tests. Let's ask some coding questions. So continuing on with our coding theme, let's now test our GPT again, but this time we're going to provide some code and ask the GPT model to explain it to us. I'm going to provide code for a binary search and ask if the GPT model can explain how it works. So as you can see, it is now providing a detailed response. And it starts by telling me that it is an implementation of binary search, which is of course what it is. Then it's explaining to me what binary search is useful for. That's also good if you're brand new to the concept of binary search. It then begins breaking down the various elements of the code. I think this is really helpful for making sense of the different parts, especially for beginners. Notice that it is almost acting like a tutor or a teacher, which is great. So we wanted our GPT model help our Hackr.io audience with their coding. And this is doing just that. If you have questions about coding, new ideas, new algorithms, etc., our GPT model is able to take those and explain them to you like a teacher or an instructor would, which is exactly what we wanted to do with our GPT model. Now, of course, we could ask many more coding questions here, but I think this is a great first test to verify that our GPT model is up to the task of explaining coding concepts to our audience. Now, we let it complete its work, is breaking down each of the different elements and giving an explanation of the different code snippets beneath, which is really good again for beginners, because you can look at each part of the code, read the explanation, and make sense of exactly what is going on. I really like this. This is showing that our GPT model is definitely going to be helpful for our audience that needs extra help when working with new coding concepts. Again, there are many more things that we could do, but I just want to say thank you to the GPT model here, just to be polite. Let's see what it says in reply. I've said thank you, and it is thinking about something. You're welcome. If you have any more questions, whether about Python or anything else, feel free to ask. Great. Step 9, even more tests. Let's create images. Next up, let's get experimental and try out our GPT model's image generation capabilities. If you remember, we checked the box to include DALL-E image generation, so our GPT model should be up for the task. I'll ask my GPT to create a fun image using the Python programming logo. Okay, of course, if you're experienced with prompt engineering for creating images with AI, you'll know this is very vague, but still, let's see what it can do. What we should expect to see any moment now is the status bar to tell us that it is generating an image, and there it is. Now, depending on the image complexity, this can take a few moments to complete, so be patient, it'll be worth it, we hope. Now, of course, you could ask for any image that you want. I have asked for the Python programming logo because it's staying on trend with what we've been looking at, which is programming and Python, just a particular video. But of course, do whatever you like here. And of course, feel free also to refine your prompt to see if you can get images based upon the original results. Now, our image is almost created. We can see the circular status bar is nearly at the top. So we just keep waiting patiently for 1 moment, and we should expect to see our image generated. And here we go. We get our image. Wow, that is quite an image. Our GPT even explains what it has done to show it has met the brief. Now, I would say this is quite good for kids. And of course, we'd have to forgive the fact that there is a spelling error. But this is a good first start, and it shows that our model is up to generating images if we need it to. Step 10, finishing final tests by searching the web. To wrap things up, let's now test our GPT by asking it to search the web. I'll ask it to tell me what our site, Hackr.io, does to help. It should then return with a detailed response. Let's see what happens after I ask this question. It takes a moment to think about it. It is then going to reply, and here we go. We get a detailed response to explain the various aspects of what we do at Hackr.io, including a summary at the start, which I would say is pretty accurate. So that is a really nice thing to see. Of course, you could ask about any website you like, as could your users, but it's great to see that our GPT model is able to determine this information for us about Hackr.io. Should also say that this response will be informed by the knowledge files that we've loaded, as our GPT's understanding and appreciation of what we do will be informed by that. But all the same, you can see that it is going into great detail to explain all the various things that we try to do at Hackr.io, and it's really nice to see that our GPT is right on the money in terms of what it is that we strive to do. That's really great. This is now wrapping up the end of our testing for our fully built GPT model. We could, of course, go into more detail with various tests, but we wanted to try out each of the different elements and confirm that they do work as we've expected them to, and it's all looking great. I hope yours is also working nicely for you. Congratulations on getting this far and building your own GPT model. So now that you've created your own GPT model, what's next? Well, one thing to bear in mind is to get ready, because the OpenAI marketplace is coming soon. By the end of this month, there'll be a fully fledged app store where you can share your GPT model with other users. You can even use this to commercialize your own GPT model if you want to sell it, or if you're a developer. Congratulations on creating your own GPT model. Is it all ready to go? Tell us all about it in the comments below. How did you find this? Is there anything extra you think that we should include, or anything fun that you did when you were creating your own GPT? Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to be the first to know when we release new videos.